This is the United States Capitol. On July 26, 2023, here for the first time in the history of the United States, parliamentary hearings were held fully devoted to the problem of unidentified flying objects. There were three speakers: David Fravor, military pilot with great experience, head of a serious team called Black Access; Ryan Graves, military pilot; and David Grush, intelligence officer. They talked about encountering UFOs in the air that they had observed on the instruments of their own airplanes. David Fravor said he first saw a UFO in 2004 over California. According to his information, from 2004 to 2021, there have been 150 episodes in US alone of people seeing UFOs. The co-pilot, Ryan Grace, said he has also seen UFOs and knows that information about them is present in the Pentagon, and the intelligence agencies of the United States of America are looking into the matter. Intelligence agent David Grush said that it is absolutely certain that the US government possesses the remains of crashed UFOs, is reverse engineering these objects, and studying alien bodies that are humanoid, but not Homo sapiens. All of these words were said under oath. And this is the space agency NASA. And on July 9th, 2022, they were recruiting a team to study UFOs. It started after the Pentagon published a credible footage of unidentified flying objects, which were dubbed Tic-Tac. But more on that later. Now let's get to the point. The first known mention of UFOs comes from the Sumerian civilization, namely the image of an object that looks like a flying rocket and the inscription Dingir, which means celestial entity. This is 3300 BC. There are quite a few similar references in human history. The Incas, Mayans, various cultures of the Middle East and Egypt depicted people with spacesuits on their heads descending from the heavens. 1st century BC, Plutarch, an ancient Greek philosopher, described a battle between Lucullus, a Roman commander, and a Spanish rebel. On the eve of the battle, a huge fireball appeared in the heavens, and the troops were so frightened by it that they scattered. The battle did not take place. 9th century AD, Leon Diakonos, Byzantine historian, mentions the appearance of a bright star which changed its trajectory, and everyone was amazed and expected some terrible consequences. Benvenuto Cellini is a prominent Italian sculptor. He described his journey from Florence to Rome. When they went up into the mountains, they saw a huge spherical body over Florence. In 1876, Camille Flammarion, French writer, published a book, The Inhabitants of the Celestial Worlds, in which he explained from the point of view of philosophy and science the existence of other worlds in the universe. On June 24, 1947, Arnold Kenneth, a private plane pilot, was flying over the mountains in Washington State, United States of America. He saw a string of objects in the air that did not look like airplanes or balloons. He saw something that resembled flying saucers that flew by very quickly and disappeared in an instant. He left a record of it, and since then, UFOs have been called flying saucers. On June 24, 1947, the crew of a United Airlines Douglas DC-3 civilian aircraft notices something shimmering red in the sky that looks like a saucer. The object flies by very quickly and disappears. 4 days afterward, the Roswell Incident occurs, which became the basis for the pseudoscience of ufology. Ranch owner W.W. Mac Brazel stated that during a thunderstorm at night, he heard a violent boom and saw a flash of light. On the morning of July 3rd, he drove out to the pen and discovered the sheep missing. While searching for the sheep, he came across a vacant lot covered with something shiny, something he had never seen before. He said he found large pieces of foil and a strange metal that doesn't bend, can't be sawed, and doesn't get hot. He also saw patterns on the site that looked like hieroglyphics. Brazel reported the incident to the local sheriff, who relayed the information to the military. The military immediately went to the ranch and collected all the evidence. At this time, Brazel went on the radio station and reported the incident, but unfortunately the broadcast was interrupted by the owner of the radio station. 5 days later, on July 8th, the military issues a press release stating that a flying saucer and pieces of the ship's hull were found. However, the next day, Air Force General Roger Mason Ramey issues a retraction. It turns out that it was the remains of a military weather probe, and the bodies were dummies. Flash forward to 1979. Officer Jesse Marcel, one of the military men who sorted through the wreckage of the flying saucer crash at the ranch, is being interviewed. He tells us that they collected the wreckage, then assembled part of the flying saucer and took it to another military base. Jesse Marcel confirmed that they also found strange sheets of foil. This material didn't burn. It weighed practically nothing. It was no thicker than the foil from a cigarette packet. It wouldn't bend. We even tried to make a dent in it with an 8-kilogram sledgehammer, but it didn't work. He also added that all parts of the aircraft had nothing to do with American, Japanese, or any other military equipment. After the interview, Gerald Anderson was found. He was just a child when he witnessed the Roswell Incident. He said 3 unidentified unconscious people were found about 2 miles from the wreckage, and there was a 4th person assisting them. They were dressed in full metal fabric suits, had boots of similar material on their feet, and their heads were drop-shaped and much larger than a standard human head. At the time, the U.S. Air Force explained what had happened. They made a statement that at the time, they were testing weapons in the area and parachuting in dummies that eyewitnesses mistook for aliens. But later, in 1994, the Pentagon said they were launching huge balloons into the stratosphere that read magnetic pulses from space and tracked Soviet military bases. One of such balloons fell to the ground. That's what witnesses to the Roswell incident saw. In April 2011, the FBI released a report that was written in 1947. The report said that they did indeed find a flying saucer and 3 bodies. The Pentagon has closed access to the case file. Washington Carousel. On July 12, 1952, at 11:40 p.m., a Washington airport dispatcher saw 7 unidentified objects on radar. He tried to contact them. The objects didn't react in any way, and moreover, they froze and then rapidly changed course. The dispatcher contacted a colleague at another station. The second dispatcher also saw 7 objects were heading toward Washington, D.C., and then just hovered over the White House and Congress. 3 hours later, 2 jet fighters arrived to patrol the skies over Washington. But they didn't see any unidentified objects and flew back to base. 2 hours later, the objects reappeared over Washington. The event is repeated, and on July 26th at 21:30, all radar stations in Washington fixed the arrival of unidentified objects. 2 jet fighters flew out to reconnoiter, and one of them saw the unidentified flying objects. It is surrounded by 4 objects, and the fighter pilot asked the base for further action. The objects then flew away. The United States Department of Defense held a press conference stating that the events were a natural phenomenon and an optical illusion. September 19, 1976, 00:30 a.m., the Iranian Air Force Command Post received 4 telephone messages from residents of the urban district of Shamiranat about an unusual orange object in the sky. Air Force General Youssefi took an F-4 Phantom II interceptor into the air. At 1:30, the warplane took off and reported to the base that he saw the object 110 kilometers away. He was given the command to approach. The pilot approached the object at 40 kilometers, and at that moment, all onboard computers shut down. The plane returned to base. At 1:40 a.m., a second F-4 piloted by LT Parviz Jafari took to the air. He flew toward the object and saw a light coming from the UFO that was interspersed with blue, green, red, and orange. The object began to move, and Jafari followed it. While chasing the UFO, a small object separated from it and headed towards the F-4 at high speed. The pilot, thinking he was under attack, tried to fire a missile, but abruptly all equipment shut down. The small object flew under the airplane, traveled several miles away, and then returned to the UFO. Later, it was found out that the object flew around the control tower and also turned off all the equipment. After arriving at the base, Jafari was debriefed in the presence of the U.S. military. This case became known as the Tehran Incident. Information began to reach Europe and America. 10 days later, Henry Kissinger, the U.S. Secretary of State, made a statement that the luminous object was a satellite or meteor. November 11, 1979. A Spanish civilian airplane was flying from Salzburg, Austria to Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, Spain. It landed in Majorca to refuel, took off, and the pilots of the plane saw a huge flying saucer with red lights. The pilot of the Spanish plane made maneuvers to increase the distance, but the flying object followed him. The pilot feared a collision and requested a landing. He landed at Valencia Airport. The dispatcher detected the UFO and relayed the data to the nearest military base. a Mirage F-1 fighter jet was taken into the air, which also detected the flying saucer. As it approached the object, the fighter jet's flight instruments also shut down. The Mirage F-1 began to pursue the object, but it accelerated and instantly flew away towards Africa. Spanish authorities said it was radiation from a chemical plant in Valencia, and the plane's instruments stopped working because the U.S. 6th Fleet was nearby, jamming any electronic devices around it. 1977. Residents of Petrozavodsk, USSR, saw something in the sky that looked like a huge jellyfish. A certain object from which beams of light resembling tentacles were emitted. The object hung in the sky, sparkling, shimmering with different hues: purple, blue, yellow, and green. The most interesting thing was that these beams of light fell to the ground and burned even holes in the windows of houses. The government commission stated that rockets were launched from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, and an optical illusion was created due to light refraction, and the holes in the windows were the fault of children who shot at the windows with slingshots. 2004 Tic-Tac. This is perhaps the most accurately documented UFO sighting. The aircraft carrier USS Nimitz and cruiser USS Princeton were on the border between the United States and Mexico. On November 10th, the aircraft carrier and cruiser radars detected unidentified flying objects in the sky at an altitude of 8,500 meters. They flew at a speed of 190 kilometers per hour. On November 14th, the incident was repeated. To intercept from the aircraft carrier sent an attack aircraft Hornet and 2 fighters. The attack aircraft pilots spotted a circular area of water 50 to 100 meters in diameter with bubbling water, over which 2 unidentified flying objects that looked like Tic-Tac candies hovered in the air. One of the fighters made an aggressive maneuver, pointing its fighter directly at the unidentified object, but it accelerated sharply and disappeared in less than 2 seconds. The turbulence in the water stopped and the pilots returned to the aircraft carrier. The command decided to take to the Air Force Super Hornet equipped with the latest infrared camera sighting module. Thanks to pilot David Fravor, the strange object was captured on video. The object at that moment hovered motionless at an altitude of more than 18 kilometers, then in a matter of seconds dropped to 150 meters, then made an incredible maneuver, and at supersonic speed went to a point. It could only be tracked by infrared. The recorded 3-minute video was only made public at the end of 2017, and in September 2019, the U.S. Navy officially recognized the authenticity of this video, as well as 2 others made during similar incidents with the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt in 2014 to 2015. The U.S. Navy could not explain what exactly is depicted in the videos, calling these objects unidentified aerial phenomena. All the cases I've told you about are recorded and documented. 2 questions arise. First, what is this? And the second is, what is the threat to us, and how is it being used by the government, because they are withholding facts and not disclosing all the details of the incidents? Why are governments silent about this? Maybe they know something that the rest of humanity should not know.